Hello and welcome to the Melta Podcast. I'm Mike Clarkson. Those of you who've been following the podcast will possibly be aware of the name Elie Hazeem. He's our tech wizard at the podcast, but also, much more importantly, he is a very successful English teacher based here in Munich since 2022. Welcome to the podcast, Elie Hazeem.
Thank you. It's very nice to have you here.
Now, Elie, one of the reasons I asked you to come to on the podcast for the interview is that you have a fascinating backstory. I remember when we met for the first time back in November, you told me that you're from Syria, you then went to the Ukraine, and you were basically forced to come west, and you found yourself in Munich. Perhaps you'd like to give us some kind of details about that? You to tell us something about the story itself?
Yeah, sure. I spent in Ukraine 8 years, almost 8 years. The first thought for me when I met my wife was for her to come to Syria, but then you know what happened, and then we had to change our plans. And so 2013 I went to Ukraine, and a lot of paperwork. I had to leave and then come back again because of the visas and stuff like that. And we spent 8 years, and I didn't start teaching in Ukraine. Teaching wasn't my first job in Ukraine. I tried several things, working in some textile shops, warehouses, working as a freelancer, writing some articles for students and stuff like that in English. But then I started to take up teaching because in Syria, because I my higher education is English language. So I started to, most of language students at university, after a couple of years, they decide to make the next step of trying themselves in teaching. Yes. So I continued in in Ukraine. I continued what I started in Syria, and with time, it was like after 2 or 3 years of me being in Ukraine. So I started teaching, and then started learning new things, new techniques, and in 2017, my first, let's say, international certificate was TKT, the first 3 modules. They're from Cambridge, but you know we made them, or I got them in Ukraine, and then in 2019 I made CELTA. So that was the beginning in Ukraine.
Just tell me a little, Elie, about the teaching that you did for those years in Ukraine, before and after you were qualified.
Okay. As people say, I started fresh. So the ideas about teaching were the ideas, or the ideas I had about teaching were the same ideas what I learned from old teachers in Syria. Like it was more like a lecture, like the teacher at the center of the lesson. But
so how many students did you have in these lecture type classes that you talk about?
Well, first I started substituting other teachers, and attended some workshops that were the basics of other things or teaching in a professional way. And later I kind of worked more on that, and we had like each class contained up to 10 students. That was the maximum in each class. Of course, I didn't have 10 every time, but I remember my first year I had my 2 own groups with 7 or sometimes 8 people, but I never had 10. And actually now not a lot of people had 10, because it was after school and people wanted different kinds of English. Some people wanted English for their job, some people wanted English for their school, some others wanted to pass some international certificates like FCE or IELTS, or so everyone had his own purposes.
Okay, so on teaching then, Elie, how does that compare to the teaching that you've been doing in Munich since you arrived in 2022?
Teaching, let me first, in Ukraine, I felt that teaching, let's say, it's not about the way of teaching itself as much as about how people looked at teaching. In Ukraine, teachers had some kind of, let's say, more protection. In Germany, it's more like business. It's more into business. Like they don't call them, for example, they don't call them students. They call them like customers. We use students only as teachers with other teachers. In Ukraine, it was like a mix of the old way people looked at teaching as something like something important, and at the same time teachers had some kind of protection. Here in Munich, and what I mean by that, here in Munich, as teachers, that's what I felt. It might be wrong, I don't know, but as teachers, as a teacher, you're always afraid to have or to make mistakes.
So sorry, are you referring to the fact that most teachers in Germany are freelance and therefore they don't have any sort of union or works council to help them out or anything like this? They don't have unemployment insurance, stuff like this. Is that what you mean, or do you mean something else?
It's a part of it.
Okay.
As I said, the main part is actually the first part is, as I said, teachers have no protection. No, I'm not talking about financial protection. I'm talking about the protection they have as they work. Because you may have 10 groups and you're doing quite well with all of them, and someone might write something in the feedback session that I didn't like this or I didn't like that. So this small feedback can destroy all the rest of other good feedback. And with that being said, your work would decline. Now, the second part of it is what you just said about the financial protection. In Ukraine, people can have, myself included, people have really good life. They can have really good life as teachers. Now, I'm not saying they are like IT people. They get as much as IT people. No, I'm not talking about that. But they can have a very good life. My wife and me, we had really, really good life, and we felt secure, financially secured.
Sorry, just to come in here. So when you say that teachers could live, I think you mean slightly better maybe than in Germany. Is it because of the rate of pay? Is it because of the cost of living is lower in Ukraine? What exactly do you mean?
Of course, there is no way to compare the payments in Ukraine and the payments in Germany. What I exactly meant is that experienced teachers or teachers with good certificates or good education are required and are provided with more opportunities. Because a lot of people won't study the languages, and let me just say something here. Most people in East Europe need languages, and so they study more to go to western parts of Europe. The second main reason is that you have people start learning teaching as teenagers. I'm like 17 or 18. We had a girl who started learning teaching when she was 16. And that's also something different here, because in all of our meetings, if you see the meetings with Melta or the meetings in other schools, I'm not going to say the name, so it's not to advertise that. And this is a very important point. It's extremely important. If you look at our meetings, how many people under the age of 60 do you see? Under the age of 50, 40? How many people under the age of 30 do you see in our meetings? Mm-hmm. And that's a big question. Why? Where is the new generation? Why no one or only few people? I'm not saying there is no one, no, but I'm talking about my own experience. Where are the young people who believe that teaching is a career, is a profession? It's just like any other profession.
I'm not sure, sorry to come in there, I'm not sure, is it the same teaching in general? When you're talking about teaching, for example, kids in the state's education system and language teachers, you do get a lot of quite young language teachers coming over. They don't always stay for particularly a long time.
Well, number one, yes, about languages. Mm-hmm. And I thought it was only about languages. But later, when we read the news, when we hear what people are talking, every day they say we want new teachers, we want new teachers. Our education system is bad, we need new teachers, more teachers. So now I realize that it's not only about language or languages, but it's also about like teaching in general. Of course, I might be wrong. I haven't been living in Germany for 50 years. Soon it will be 2 years, but what I see every day at my workplace or what I read in the news, what I hear from the news, they all support the idea or the conclusion which I have reached. So yes, this is one of the main differences. In Ukraine, you start learning teaching as a teenager.
So you mean that you start learning when you're still at school, or you start your teacher training immediately after school, or what are you referring to?
In Ukraine or
in Ukraine?
In Ukraine we had I don't know I don't know too much about the system of education in Ukraine, but had one girl. I think she was high school. She was 16, I think. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and she started, and others were in their 20s. They were in their first years of university, and some people studied something. For example, they studied economy or business at university, but they decided to also study teaching, and they started at a young age. So that's what I'm talking about. These are the main differences between Ukraine and Germany. Okay. Respect teaching as a profession, not as a mini job. I do it. Well, I'm staying home. I have nothing to do.
So in the Ukraine, you're saying that teaching is still a much more valued, respected profession than it is in Western Europe.
Definitely. And again, this is what I have seen. I'm not saying I'm an expert. I'm not saying that what I'm saying is my definite conclusion. In the future, it might be changed, but what I've seen till now, I've just said.
On the subject of differences between the Ukraine and Germany, I'd like to move on and ask you about your feelings of being accepted, welcomed as a Syrian national. How was it different in the Ukraine to Germany in terms of acceptance or integration and stuff like this? Just how welcome you felt as an outsider.
In both countries, I was accepted. In Ukraine, I was accepted, and also in Germany, also all Germans, at least let me say all the Germans I know. So I'm not going to say that all Ukrainians are good or bad, all Germans are good or bad, or Syrians are no. I lived in Ukraine. I felt accepted. I didn't speak the language. I didn't, and I still don't speak the language, Russian or Ukrainian. I felt okay. In Germany, if you talk about the people, also, okay? I haven't been exposed to any kind of, let's say, not being accepted or neglected, or no.
How do you feel about the rise of the far right in Europe and in particular in Germany? As you know, the AfD could well win a state election or even more than one in the upcoming elections. How does that make you feel?
If this party or that party reaches, the office here in Germany or in any other country, I actually don't care, for one reason, because I don't see my future in Germany.
Why is that?
There are first. I'm as Syrian. I'm tired of moving from one place to another, from Syria to Ukraine, and then from Ukraine to Germany, and even here in Germany, we don't know about the future. And for me, the life is life here in Germany. Of course, again, put the people away. I'm not talking about the people. Everything is complicated, even though the simple things are complicated. And in everything you do, even your daily routine is complicated. And I actually, concerning the system, I don't feel comfortable here. We are dealing, I personally, and I guess also my wife, are dealing with constant fear of the future. What's going to happen? And then what's next? And then, plus, there's something which we have lost so far. We have lost 2 years of our lives just learning the language. Now, don't misunderstand me. Learning a language, any language, is something good. Learning languages will one day come in handy. That's 100%. I'm not talking about learning the language. I'm talking about wasting 2 years of your life just to learn the language. In Ukraine, you could learn the language as you work. You could learn the language as you live your daily life. Here in Germany, life stopped. You cannot do anything before you study the language. And even, I'm talking about here in Munich. Munich, you can see, even in the train, in the underground, you can see the writings also in English.
That was my point. I mean, I do have colleagues who've been in Germany for many years, and their German is very poor, if non-existent. So, is it not enough?
Where are they from?
They are native speakers from the States or Britain or Australia or wherever. Are you saying that's different? I mean, could you not get by just with English?
No.
Okay.
As for us, it's our age. Look, in United States, in England, people, okay, you come here to Germany, if something goes wrong, you can always go back. You always have a home.
Yeah.
If you don't like the life here in Germany, if you have problems, if you're tired of the routine, if you are scared every moment or every time you see the postman, because say, please don't put anything in my box office, please don't do that, please don't do that. You can always say, okay, to hell with everything, I'm going back to the United States, I'm going back to England.
Sure. But
me and my wife, where to go back?
Of course, there's no guarantee that in the next few years the Ukraine is going to be a safe place. If as I said, the rise of the far right does actually accelerate or becomes more entrenched, there's a very good chance that the Ukraine will lose the support of the West militarily, and you could find that Ukraine becomes part of Russia.
Okay, well, honestly, to be honest with you, my understanding and my experience as Syrian, if, let's say, the big powers wanted to stop the war or to prevent the war, it would have been stopped after a couple of weeks. And the things which I used to say a year ago, people would call me crazy when I said that, don't trust anyone. even those who claim to be helping you. And they would call me, no, we have friends, we have European friends, we have American friends, they all want to stop the war. And you heard like a couple of weeks ago, even from, you forget about what the Russians say, but even from Ukrainians, they said that the ex-prime minister, Boris Johnson, convinced.
I hope you didn't say Sir Boris Johnson, though, did you?
Boris, I think.
It's just
Boris Johnson.
Just
no.
Johnson.
Yeah, the only Sir I know is Sir Alex Ferguson and Sean Connery.
So. There are more, but okay.
Yeah, yeah. So it came from the Ukrainian, presidential group, if I can call that, and that they said that they advised them, convinced them to stop the war. And so again, it's not about it's sometimes you have an enemy, but sometimes you are not trust. You can believe your enemy more than your friend. And so I believe that when the time comes to end the war will end. Which I don't know when exactly. I'm not a politician. And I'm saying this not because, it's not, I'm not a political, let's say, how to say those who speak about politics and,
a pundit?
Yes, so something like that. No, I'm not saying, I'm saying that because I have seen this film before. I've seen it in Syria. Uh-huh. And now I'm watching the same in Ukraine. The problem is, unfortunately, there are people who say, something happens in one part of the world, it will not exceed to reach something else, or to reach another place. And it's something that one German lady told me and said, in Syria was far, and we never expected it to reach Europe, but now it's in Ukraine and it's getting closer. And I said, that's the problem. COVID started in China. If you know what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, before we get back on to the teaching side of things, I just wanted to ask you one more thing relating to that. I cannot even begin to imagine how hellish, how horrific it must be to have to flee from your home because your country, your home, your city is being invaded by a foreign power, a foreign army. Can you just try and give me some sort of idea what that must be like, what that is like for you, and what goes through your mind at times like
this? In Syria, actually, where we lived in Syria, we lived in a safe part of Syria. We didn't have, let's say, clashes in our city. In Ukraine, well, of course, in Syria we could hear, reading the news, hearing some kind of rockets flying, but in the air, not attacking you, but other parts attacking other parts. In Ukraine, it was different. In Ukraine, it was a country attacking another country, so it was different. But let me tell you something, the war is a war. The only thing is, in Ukraine, for me, as a second time, it was more like a lifestyle. So I wouldn't call it hell or hellish. I'd call it a lifestyle. So when I told my Ukrainian friends and colleagues that you will get used to that after some time, they said you're crazy. And now I speak with them and they say that we don't care anymore. When we hear the sirens, no, we don't care. We don't run around to shelters. And actually, in the very first day or 2 days of the war on Ukraine, not in Ukraine, I would say the war on Ukraine, we would run to the basement. The next day, or the third day, we would walk to the basement. The third or the fourth day, Nothing.
So what gave you, what made you actually leave them in the end?
Ukraine.
Yeah.
When you are alone, when you live alone, it's okay, you can do whatever you want. But when you have a family, when you have a wife, it's different. And one of the main reasons I'm here in Germany, or outside Ukraine, let's say, not particularly Germany, is because of my wife. And I've already made decision. And my wife knows that once the war is over and the economy isn't dead, so there to be two things. I'm going back.
Okay.
If you want to stay, stay. If you don't want, if you want to go back with me, you're welcome. If you want to stay in Germany, stay in Germany. But I'm not staying in Germany. I'm not staying outside Ukraine. There are two countries where I would live, either Syria or Ukraine. Syria is my home country, and Ukraine. It's true that I don't have the papers that prove that I'm Ukrainian, but I believe that my relationship with Ukrainian people.
So you don't have any sort of residence permit?
I have residence permit,
Uh-huh.
but I don't have the Ukrainian passport.
Okay.
So yeah, that's what I'm talking about. But in the documents, I'm not Ukrainian. But I always say that my relationship with Ukrainians, with Ukrainian people, yeah, it's not only about a couple of papers. I lived with Ukrainians. They were my students. They were my friends. They were my colleagues. I entered their houses. They entered my house. I ate their food. They ate my food. So yeah, I do consider them as a family, and that's why I said two countries where I really consider home. Syria is my ultimate home, and it's where I will be buried later. I don't know when. And the second home is Ukraine.
Elie, let's move on now to back to the kind of teaching arena, as it were. You wrote a very interesting article in the last issue of the Melta News, in which you said that just because you are an experienced, you're a CELTA trained teacher, doesn't necessarily mean that you're actually a good teacher.
Right.
Do you want to explain that?
Rule 1 we had in our very first day in CELTA. Our tutor said, remember guys, you are teaching people, not books. Which means CELTA, what we have a checklist for CELTA. 1, 2, 3. Does mean that this checklist was based on nothing. Yeah, of course, those who made it were experienced. But you know very well, because you are also a teacher, that we should expect the unexpected. We should be prepared for everything. Sometimes, and most of the times, people don't like when we tell them, read this quickly and then read slowly. They wouldn't understand the difference, why we are doing that. They would say, well, I've just read that. Why do I have to read it again? And some teachers, they stick to the book, stick to CELTA. They don't change. They consider that students are ignorant. They know nothing. We are the best. We should do that. In theory, that's right. We know this is our job. But our job is not to teach. That's what I believe in. Our job is to tell people how to get the information. We shouldn't give them the information. And in order to do that, they have to trust us. And if we always tell them, this is right, this is wrong, do this, do that, if we are stubborn, we stick to what we do, it's not gonna work. We can do the same thing which we learned, but in different way. Some teachers, they have CELTA, they might even have CELTA A. But CELTA A based on the checklist, not based on their performance with the students. Students may not accept them. Some, as I say, some other teachers, they try to improve. They try to work more on their skills to let students trust them more, and through that they can give them, or they can help them learn.
Is it not the case that a lot of teachers tend to stick to course books in the early part of their career because they don't have the confidence. But as they gain more experience, as they get more confident, then they are able to liberate themselves, as it were, from a course book and do more creative stuff, listen to what the students are actually asking of them.
This is, if I have a list of reasons, I would put this reason at the last reason.
Okay.
Because I'm talking about teachers who have been teaching for a decade or 2 decades. I'm not talking about teachers who started teaching yesterday. So, no, I wouldn't. I would say this is the last reason, at the bottom of the list.
Okay.
Of course, confidence is important. Of course, you gain confidence every day, and I mean, this is obvious.
You will remember, Elie, because you were the tech wizard, as you always are during our podcast. In the first podcast we did with Simon Marshall back in November, he said at the end that his advice to all teachers, potential teachers, present teachers, is to not always do what you have always done. And so you would wholeheartedly agree with that, I guess, right?
Well, actually, yeah, that's right, and you know, it's very nice. It's very nice to know that an experienced person like Simon agrees. And actually, that one was a script of one of my videos on my channel on YouTube. But the thing is, and let me be honest here, when something comes from a native speaker, an English person, American person, Australian person, people would believe him. But when it comes from Syrian or Ukrainian or even German, people wouldn't take it as seriously as they would take.
Sorry, are you talking about opinions or are you talking about linguistic, like
everything,
grammatical
everything, everything related to English language? The same would happen if you were talking about Spanish. If, okay, my wife is Ukrainian, but she speaks Spanish. If she says something about Spanish language, this is right, this is wrong, and another Spanish person, people may not take her seriously. But if a Spanish person says exactly the same things as she said, people will believe him. Why? Because he's Spanish.
There is definitely this entrenched belief that native speakers always know best, right?
Exactly. And they think, I asked my wife several times to teach me Russian. She speaks Russian and Ukrainian, but her mother tongue is Russian. And she didn't know how to teach me Russian. And she would always ask me to teach her Arabic, which I know, but I don't speak. And I failed. And I remember one guy wanted me to teach him Arabic. He came for one lesson, and then he said, thank you very much. I'll see you tomorrow, and I never saw him again.
That happens to native English teachers too. It's happened to me before.
Yeah.
After one class, you never see them again. It does happen to us too.
Yeah. And actually, it's something. It's something which I'm also planning to talk about in one of my videos in the future. That you know the language, you receive the language. It does mean you can explain it. So
that's a good point. That is a very good point.
Yeah.
You've mentioned already, Elie, about your YouTube channel. Tell us something about that.
The first thought that came to my mind about having my YouTube channel was to just share my thoughts. You know, in Facebook you say what's on your mind or what's happening and stuff like that. So I wanted to have the same, but instead of text and an image, I have a video. And then I started to turn it into something, let's say, to talk about my problems as a person working in teaching. And then it became more about helping or sharing my experience with teachers. Then I found out that there are a lot of channels to teach you English. I'll be talking about English because I teach English. I'm not going to talk about other languages or stuff like that. So they can You can find a lot of channels about teaching English, how to teach English. So, sorry, not how to teach, how to be a better teacher, how to help your students, how to improve, how to do this, how to do that. But I haven't seen any channel talking about those poor people called teachers. So, how to make your teacher feel comfortable, how to make your teacher avoid problems.
You're onto a winner there, Elie. I love the sound of that.
Yeah. Everything is focused, all the focus is on the student. And how about the teachers? Who are they? Like a pair of socks? You wear them for some time and then you throw them. No one cares. Why do everything I have to do in my life is to comfort the student, to make the student feel comfortable, to make the student be a better student or to learn better language. And how about me? A doormat? What? I'm not saying there are no channels. There might be, but I haven't seen. So I said, okay, if I have a channel, come and study English. Yeah, thank you very much. We have more channels than we can ever count. So that was my idea. And yeah, I gave it a go. And, well, it's still, it's still not popular. Because I don't think.
Tell everybody what the name of the channel is, so they can search for it themselves.
It's Teachers Lounge. Teachers Lounge. Yeah, nothing special.
You can just find that on YouTube. Yes.
Yeah. And also one of the reasons is like helping people, special teachers, finding or like finding something or improving their chances of getting more and more work. Because and I think I should have said that when you asked me about the situation in Germany. Unfortunately, we feel like we are guinea pigs, and some people, they want us to be integrated, and then we work. And first we study the language. Yeah. So to learn the language and integrate and then work, and then there's another person or another group says that we should learn the language we can learn the language as we work. And when my wife and me, we went to like working agency to help us find a job. The lady asked a question, and it was more an answer than a question. She said, "You are educated, you have certificates, you speak languages. What are you doing here?" Said.
So she was basically telling you, go and find a job yourself. You're qualified.
No, she said usually people who come to us, they cannot even read. So also part of my channel is like helping those people, because I'm in the same thing, I'm in the same. I will not say the word, but you got it. So maybe I can share my experience. Maybe some other people can also share their experience. And again, it's about teachers. Why not about the whole thing in Germany? Because doctors can speak for themselves, engineers can speak for themselves. I teach English. I speak about English teachers, or like let's say teachers in general. Everyone speaks about.
Is it not related to the fact that the vast majority of us are freelance, and therefore we do not have the kind of collective might, the collective rights, or even
Exactly. This is one of the reasons. Actually, it's one of the differences, as I said, between Ukraine and Germany, and also about the teachers. Why bus drivers, with all respect to bus drivers, if they have a sick leave. Cleaners, with all my respect to cleaners. Now, if we work, for example, we work in the class, if something happens on the road, if there is an accident, or if we teach in the classroom and one person has COVID or any other disease, and we get infected because we are doing our job, would anyone pay us a sick leave? Would anyone pay us for the lessons we didn't teach because we were infected while we were working? So this all, everything is connected. Everything.
That's great, Elie. Really interesting. And I urge viewers, listeners to check out Elie's Teachers Managers. Sounds very interesting. Elie, just to finish off, I'm going to put you on the spot here. I'm going to ask you to, at the end now, just to give other teachers a word of advice. What would be the one piece of advice that you would give other teachers?
All teachers or teachers in Germany? Or teachers outside?
As you wish.
For teachers outside, for teachers in East Europe, if you're teachers and if you live in a safe place, a NATO country, stay there, teach. Don't come. Don't leave your countries. Okay. For people who live in East Europe, I don't know about other countries, but let's say in Germany, if you are planning to keep teaching. You will need a miracle.
A miracle?
A miracle.
What are you referring to exactly?
Someone has a job opportunity and he or she finds you by accident. Because to be a teacher here as a freelance, you will have to, as I said, you will have to live in constant financial fear. Yeah. It might be in other Western European countries. I don't know.
The simple solution to that is to find a salaried position, but that is easier said than done. Obviously,
exactly.
In our profession. Yes.
Exactly.
Elie, thank you so much. That was fascinating. Thank you so much for coming on today's podcast.
Thank you. Actually, you came. You came. Exactly. Thank you for coming. Yeah, we live here. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Cheers.
Cheers.
Good luck with everything.
Thank you.
Take care.